In 2006, the world-renowned astrophysicist, Richard Conn Henry, published an academic article titled The Mental Universe, which was based on modern scientific discovery. He ended the article with the words, "The universe is immaterial, mental and spiritual. Live and enjoy." With this sentiment, we will explore the one thing we must do to find healing and forgiveness. The one thing we must do to become whole. In John 4, Jesus stated that God is spirit, and in Genesis 1, the ancient prophets stated that we are made in God's image and likeness. In other words, you and I are spiritual beings. From time immemorial, God, the universal mind, has been guiding the process of evolution. However, He changed something when He gave us consciousness. When God gave us consciousness, He gave us the ability to participate in our own physical and spiritual evolution. He gave us the ability to specialize the process of evolution. Scientists and spiritual leaders have been theorizing over the mind's role in evolution for over a century. The study of contemporary epigenetics and findings in quantum physics show us that forces such as our thought and states of consciousness steer our evolution. We are all growing as God's spiritual children, living with an imperfect understanding of our environment. When designing the universe, God had to have known that without an environment of potentially varying qualities, including the good, the bad, and everything in between, we could not live real lives. We would not be able to choose to live rightly. We would simply be NPCs and automatons, not children of God the Almighty, made in His image and likeness. It would be impossible to understand good and righteousness without other less pleasurable levels of consciousness. Like any loving Father would do, our infinitely loving Father gave us free will to live our lives through experience and to grow. Knowing that the loving Father has given us free will and an environment that can be challenging to live in, He knows we will make mistakes. We are learning and growing. He looks upon us with infinite love and affection, so much so that He has the hairs on your head counted. Luke 12. He will always forgive you if you're trying. You are one of His children put in a world of choice. You're going to err, and you're going to make mistakes. Maybe huge mistakes. But you didn't intentionally choose your environment. You did not choose what shaped you since you were a child. Nobody has. Many children have difficult lives, and no child has a perfect upbringing. God knows this and looks upon us with a love and mercy that we cannot truly comprehend. He wants us to grow and thrive more so than we can imagine. With all of this being said, there is often a confusion about God. It has been instilled in many of us from a young age to think of the God of the Old Testament as the final realization of God, a God of punishment and heated emotion, a God that wants to smite people for their misgivings, a God that agrees we should take an eye for an eye. Jesus stated this is an incomplete account of God. When looking to understand Moses and his teaching, we must realize Moses was a man of his time and used the idea of God to explain only God's spiritual law. One widely known example of spiritual law being karma. But in Matthew 5, it is written that Jesus came to fulfill the law, meaning He came to transcend the teaching of Moses. What Moses did in his time was very useful. Moses studied at the highest level in the mystical temples of the Egyptians, and Moses' description of spiritual law was useful for the barbaric and uneducated people of his time, people who needed to be set on the right path. But again, Jesus came to complete the teaching. Jesus taught us that God is more than spiritual law. Jesus taught that God is an infinitely loving Father who offers grace to those who come to Him no matter what they have done. When you pray to God, you have to pray to the perfect loving Father Jesus described Him as. You cannot use Moses' idea of God alone. Use the Old Testament to study the laws of life. Use the Old Testament to learn about the prophets. Make use of the Psalms and Proverbs. But know that the gospel of Jesus the Christ is the ultimate authority which completes the teaching. God created spiritual law, and you live with it, but God will always be there for you to learn it and benefit from it. What you have to do is ask in faith and trust in your Father to help you live in this framework. Now let's expand on this topic and put some imagery to it. Imagine there is this loving man who has a child. He is a good father by all agreeable standards. This good father takes his small child to this wonderful park where there are ball fields, playground equipment, and many other children from the neighborhood who are all there playing. The good father wants the child to play and have a great time with the other children. Even with this being so, the good father knows there is the potential that his child might not understand the rules that are posted in the park and may not follow them. The child could get hurt on the equipment or get into a fight with another child. In the park, there is freedom for the child to live. Suppose the child falls while playing and gets hurt. What does the good father do? He goes to the child to make sure they are all right. The child instinctively reaches up to embrace their father and hugs the father for comfort. Suppose the child breaks a rule. The good father doesn't get angry. He affectionately knows that his child is still learning the rules. The good father wants the small child to learn to play right so that the child has fun and is happy. Now, this might mean the child gets a timeout or some other form of reprimand. But in the end, the father does it so that the child can learn and grow so that they can continue to have fun in the park with their friends. So the child can find joy. Everything that the good father does is in the interest of the child. He brings the child to the park. He lets the child use their free will to play with others and have fun and learn. When the father steps in, it is to help the child learn a lesson that will benefit the child. A child who runs away from the good father cannot be taught the lesson. They cannot be consoled when hurt, and they will go through the park haphazardly and ultimately confused. But the good father is always right there in the park, patiently waiting for the child, looking on with love so that he can comfort the child in any circumstance. It's a parable with a straightforward message. The park is the life that God brings us to. You are the child in the park, and God is the good father. The rules of the park are the spiritual laws we live with. Like the child in the story, you need to be open to your father's embrace with love. He will help you find fulfillment and happiness beyond what you have imagined. Maybe some kids bullied you on the playground, so you broke one of the rules while fighting them. Maybe you climbed on some equipment that was too high or ran close to the street, endangering yourself in the process. As spiritual children, we do not understand all of the rules or why things happen to us. And that is why Jesus says to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. It is also why Jesus states, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. You will be infinitely better off as the loving child that opens to your Father's loving embrace. The more you run from Him, the more confused you will be. You must also realize that all the other children in the park have run into challenges that have also led to their mistakes. Love yourself as God's child and love the others around you. If you are in a dark place, going to the Father can be much easier said than done. You may feel ashamed of what you have done or how you have lived. If you need to, give time to whatever it is that is troubling you while keeping the Father in mind. He is patiently waiting to help you. He will lift you up and take you higher than you can imagine yourself. Jesus brought these teachings to us to make our lives better. In John 10, He states, I have come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Trust that the abundance is the gift that God offers. Ask, seek, and knock, and you will see the door open in your life. Matthew 7. God is infinitely intelligent and knows your intentions. Once you make your relationship with God the goal, the door will open in ways you couldn't imagine yourself. God will be guiding you. Jesus also states in Matthew 7, "If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him?" Any evil you do is simply due to your ignorance of spiritual law. Surrender your lower human self to God's divine plan. Receive the gift of grace. Transcend. Our final example will be the parable of the prodigal son, the greatest story ever told to man. In it, Jesus reassures us we can receive grace and all of what God offers, not through our works, but through our embrace of God the loving Father. The parable ends with these words, "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found." The most important thing we can do with our free will is to love our Father and go to Him. He knows we are little children. No matter the circumstance, He is with you right now with open arms, ready to help you. Everything that is His will be given to us as long as we ask for forgiveness, have faith, and open ourselves to Him. That is the undeniable truth about what Jesus states in the Gospels. In the next video, we will build upon this topic to explain the esoteric and psychological power that Jesus' ultimate sacrifice has to save our souls.